and welcome to the last episode of Series 1 of the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour. We've had a ton of fun bringing you the show over the last couple of months. We hope you've had a good time listening to it. Planning is well underway for Series 2, so keep checking the Facebook page, the Twitter, and the Instagram for updates as we have them. But before all that, we've got to do one more. This is episode 7, and this time we're talking about Mondo, the rise of exploitation movies, and in fact the end of movies as we knew them. It's a big topic, it's kind of deep stuff. I think you're going to have a good time listening to it, though. By the way, it is Kane in the title. I think everybody in the show mispronounces it at least a dozen times. You just kind of find a way to get over that. This was the last episode we recorded for Series 1. We recorded this mere days before we all went into lockdown back in March. Nathan and Katie were back in the studio to tackle this very weird and very divisive movie. You know what? In fact, to put you in the mood for it, I think I'll just let the narrator introduce it to you.
All the scenes that you are about to see are real and were shot as they were taking place. If sometimes they seem cruel, it is only because cruelty abounds on this planet. And anyway, the duty of a reporter is not to make the truth seem sweeter, but to show things as they really are.
He was the clown from Howdy Doody before
you just ruined him.
That's insane.
What was it?
Clarabelle.
Clarabelle. Yeah. That's what my dad told me, Bob Keeshan.
Bob
Are you
Keeshan.
sure it's Bob Keeshan the same? Because you can't tell. He's got the nose.
He's got the nose?
He's got the nose. And later on, he didn't have a nose.
This is how you know superhero disguises would actually work, because you couldn't tell who that was behind the nose.
Well, I would buy the Clark Kent disguise.
That's pushing it a little bit.
You would always fall for that?
Yeah, because the glasses, I mean, obviously, that's not, he doesn't have the hair curl. I'm just kidding.
I was like, I can't tell if this is sarcasm or not. It's Mondo Jim, Mondo racism.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot to unpack in this movie.
And
for
it's
sure.
the end is so funny to me. Because it's like, if you find religion, you won't be evil anymore. Like, it's...
Yes, that we will discuss.
That was a trend, codas, to these films, because they would make you feel like grimy and shit, and then they would go, here's a sunrise, you know. And you're like,
or like,
thanks, you just fucked me in the ass for 2 hours.
or something. They always have good scores.
That's
for
true.
some reason.
No, they do, because that's probably the best. Anyway.
The only redeeming quality. And they're sometimes in color. You got to give them that.
True. Although you probably don't want a lot of the footage in Mondo Kanye in color.
Mondo Kanye.
Right.
It's starting again.
Anthony Perkins, Psycho 2. Oh, I thought you were doing a reference.
Oh.
It's starting again.
No, that's not where I was going with that. Anyway, we should get started. Welcome once again to another thrill-packed and exciting episode of the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour. Today we are going back to 1962 and the change that happened in movies forever. We had at least 40 years of exploitation films up to this point. We started with the hygiene films that taught you how not to get syphilis when stationed in France during World War I. Supposed sex education films that were very successful, played for years. Gangster movies. Exotic movies started to come in a little later. And then in March 1962, the 30th to be precise, we got MC Hammer. He was born that day. I don't know if you knew that. Totally was. Congratulations, MC Hammer being released from his mother's uterus. And also...
his father wanted to hold him, but they were like, you can't touch this.
You can't touch that? No. But we also got the release of Mondo, which was really the first movie of its kind. Went on to gross $2 million in the United States, which is pretty staggering considering what this movie is. And it really opened the door to what became an arms race for what came to be called the atrocity film that spread throughout the 60s, toned down a smidge in the 70s, and then blew back up again with Faces of Death in the 80s and so on and so on. Most everybody who sees this has a very strong reaction one way or another. I personally find these kind of movies boring.
It definitely had boring bits to it.
They're very uneven. They're not put together all that well. It's just a series of things we're supposed to be either outraged by, disgusted by, or find titillating or funny. Generally speaking, these kind of movies that are kind of okay, then they'll smash cut to something absolutely horrible. They'll show like a dog eating something and then cut to a dead body with no notice whatsoever.
A non sequitur.
Yeah, and that's just how they did it. Mondo Kanye is equally weird because...
What?
Damn, I did it again, didn't I?
He didn't even notice. That's the best part.
It's his fault. He started this. Anyway, Mondo Kane, which means Dog's World, was, like I said, released in 1962. It went on to win. It was up for 2 awards. It got one of them. It got the 1962 David Di Donatello for Best Production Award from the Italians
are
Academy of
they
Cinema.
love shit like this.
Oh, yeah.
It was up for the Palme d'Or at Cannes, but lost to a Brazilian movie called O Pagador de Promessas.
That always makes me laugh about Cannes because they hate the stuff Lars von Trier brings, but they eat stuff up like this.
It is weird.
Well,
I mean,
but it was also like the first
True.
of a trend.
Yeah.
So no one knew what the hell they were getting into. So.
And anybody who says that the Cannes Film Festival is very high-minded and
Upper-
hoity, they're absolutely full of
crust.
crap. And 90% of the Cannes Film Festival is stuff like Mondo
Exploitation. Yes.
Straight up exploitation. It's broken down into several vignettes. We start off with the dog pound in the opening narration, which is supposed to be setting up this movie, but really doesn't.
I think it does kind of visually. It lets you know what you potentially are getting into. Because not even paying attention to for me it did. Because you see a man dragging a dog, like you kind of are like, because that's immediately when I would texted you and was like, what am I getting into?
Well, Nathan and I had kind of debated this before, is that we were kind of suspicious that the text on the screen and the narrator do not match each other really that well. So there was
like something
maybe it
may
was
be
dubbed
lost in
over.
translation.
I watched an English dub of it.
Right.
Okay.
Saying maybe the narration got redubbed for the American market,
Right.
perhaps.
The
Supposedly
domestic
it was
version might
restored
be
a few
totally
years
different.
back, so it might have been.
I mean, I have
don't know.
never found any evidence to suggest that what we see now is not the version that was out originally or was released to other countries. I don't really know how you could misconstrue any of the stuff they're showing as being something other than exactly what it is.
No, but we discussed some of the key points throughout. Like the narration is very tongue-in-cheek.
Condescending, I think, is a word I would
yes.
use in a lot of places.
So it's almost an American
View
comment
of,
on that society.
And you
or
definitely
whatever
get that throughout
society.
the whole thing.
A lot of these movies were produced to make the audience feel better about themselves by thinking, well, my life's screwed up, but at least I don't do that.
Well, it's also very.
Or I will start doing that after
That's a
watching
great
it.
idea.
It's also very
I know what to do with spring break now.
pro, almost like the outsider looking in, like pro-American, like, oh, we're better than that because we don't do that. Like it does give you that feel when you're watching it, especially towards the end.
An insane travelogues.
It is. Well, we start with the dedication of the Valentino statue in Italy and what seems like an endless series of freeze frames on various Italian faces of people we're told look up to Valentino and want to be the next Valentino. I'm not buying it, but okay, whatever. That segues into the first of what were many misogynistic clips in this film of the female fans attacking Rosa Brazzi. It had been in South Pacific and Barefoot Contessa.
Rosanna Brasi?
Yes, later in Omen 3, Final Conflict, but that was
He's in on
well
Nazi
after this.
Secret Service as well.
Was he?
Yeah.
I didn't see that in his credits. What was he doing in that
I don't
movie?
know. I don't remember.
Did he have a nose on and you couldn't
Rosanna
tell who it was?
Brazzi.
But yeah, that was the first clip that was definitely staged. No way that was real. Just no. I don't see it.
So it's still star value, but he was never promoted in the publicity materials.
No.
Like, why else would he be in it though? That's the thing.
I see he'd been in all of about 2 movies released in the United States by the time Mondo Kane came out.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel right to me.
It was the market appeal, yeah.
That and the follow-up to that gets even worse when you have the supposed nude women chasing the guy down in New Guinea as a part of some mating
the
ritual.
Graham Chapman sequence.
Exactly.
Okay. That's right.
Now, I immediately picked this out as it's probably fake because it's shot from multiple camera angles.
So I guess my question
it
is,
looks staged. It feels staged.
since you're saying this bit about it being staged,
Probably.
is this meant, because I went in completely blind. I didn't know anything about it,
I
clearly.
thought you said you watched it.
I did. Oh,
Oh, okay.
oh yeah, I didn't have the
Figure of
descriptive.
speech.
Descriptive audio track.
You should check out Basic Instinct. It's pretty good.
So is it meant to be real, or is
they presented this as fact?
But I mean,
it could be like 50-50.
Like a mockumentary is more how I took it. Because like I said, I went into it not knowing.
All of these kinds of films were promoted as solid fact.
Well, that makes sense, though, that she would go into it cold and think it is a mockumentary based on
because
like,
I'm
the
used
narration
to stuff like Cannibal Holocaust, where
Sure.
it is meant to be documentary style, but clearly it's not real. So I just assumed this was that as well.
But this does have a mocking vibe to it.
Very much so.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
But you don't know if that's condescension because it's supposed to be like, oh, this is how we're looking at it, or
they're definitely mocking their subject matter, and they're presenting the subject matter as true to life fact throughout this thing.
It's all sensational.
If they were trying to make a joke, I don't think that they were in on it. So
I think some of it too is if you don't know what you're watching, then it's not going to be real to you. Like most people aren't going to know who that guy is. Like so. And
they may not even know themselves what type of tone they want to project with this, because
definitely
it's
not.
Just a
especially
series
since
of
it started
unrelated.
out this type of subgenre. Like,
they didn't know what they had. They didn't know it would become a trend.
Sort of like the producers of several other movies that came out around this time also. The big one being State Fair, which was Mondo's only competition in theaters at the time.
Right.
Basically the least popular Pat Boone movie ever.
What about Switchblade and the Cross with Eric Estrada?
Okay, that one's the least popular. But we also had Journey to the Seventh Planet before this, The Manster.
Yes.
A really difficult competition for Mondo County in theaters. Cleo from 5 to 7 came out later. Ega.
Hell yeah.
A bit later on.
Arch Hall Jr.
The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, Night of the Eagle, and A Taste of Honey were all circulating in theaters around the time that this movie came out.
Well, clearly Liberty Valance would be and State Fair were the biggest, right? You said competition-wise?
Probably, I would think so. I don't imagine Manster was like rampaging across the country.
I didn't say it wasn't number 3. That could have been number 3.
What? Oh, 3? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Some people say it's number 2, but I think it's a solid number 3. Anyway.
So naked women chase a guy around in New Guinea. Then we cut to the bikini women doing drive-bys of sailors. I think it was Pearl Harbor, where they're just doing flybys on this boat full of sailors trying to catch them a man.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I believe that either. I'm guessing it could have happened.
These people don't do this stuff for real.
I suppose it could work. I mean,
especially
they're expecting them to just jump off the ship.
You got to do something.
Yeah.
I think things were.
They may have just been there, and then the camera came into play, and they performed for the camera.
It can be very important to remember to frame this in an era where there was no cable television.
Yeah.
True.
And, in Italy at that.
I mean, you look back at the entertainment that we settled for back in the day when we had 4 channels and a couple of radio stations and think, okay, I can see where people would go see this a lot.
Yeah. Well, this is nothing ultimate like escape Junction. If you think about it. Yeah. Definitely not Petticoat Junction.
Let's see. Do we watch Green Acres again, or do we go see this Mondo thing? I won't,
It's interesting to me that it was even in the theater. Because I feel like if something like this came out now, if it was in the theater, it would be like one night only and a special one.
You had 2 very different tracks of movie theaters. You had your main movie theaters, which would be showing State Fair, would be showing the Warner Brothers Universal releases, and a whole circuit of straight up exploitation theaters that did nothing but present your William Castles, and all of that stuff.
They need to be more relevant now.
By the time this movie came out, those lines had been crossed and never taken apart again.
And the studio or the distribution may have four-walled certain theaters to get these played endlessly.
I think by this time they had sort of either been forced to or giving up ownership of the theaters. They were de-integrating. We had no rating system yet. That didn't come around for another 7 years. So it was kind of a free-for-all for a long time.
And that's where you get people like Herschel Gordon Lewis coming onto the scene shortly after.
No, we talked about this before. It's like, I don't think Herschel Gordon Lewis would have been able to make any of the things he did if this thing hadn't happened first. If this thing hadn't started,
even though I hate it, I'm glad it exists because I love Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Because everything that came after this.
It may not be a direct line, but it broke down the barriers.
It definitely helped.
Everything after this just got worse in a way. They had to ratchet it up and keep turning up the volume on it and keep going.
The Italian ones are.
Oh, certainly. Then we start getting in some weird territory. We have the Chimbu tribe again in New Guinea, where they spent a lot of time. who are supposedly cannibals but don't actually eat anything but once every 5 years, and then they throw pig parts at each other or something.
So weird how everything in this film is presented.
Did you notice that some of the tribesmen are wearing sunglasses? Because
okay, then that
I'm
would
not sure
definitely
So what are you trying to say, though? I mean,
I'm trying to say that the idea that these guys fast for 5 years.
I don't necessarily take it as a fasting thing. There are many tribes that it is ritualistic.
Don't defend this.
Well, no, because no, I'm not. I'm just saying that there are some that it's like they only practice cannibalism in certain rituals, whereas everything else is normal.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense. Especially like when you have a camera crew.
You're probably not going to be your normal. Not saying that this isn't staged, but if you are definitely being filmed, you're probably not going to be like, hey, let's do our most heinous shit so they can see this,
well, it is important to note that this was also toward the beginning of the practice of visual anthropology, where we actually did take cameras into this. I mean, Nanook of the North came way before this, which was staged. But any research I've done into visual anthropology, there's really 3 main takeaways. First is, of course, people act differently when you point a camera at them. You act differently when you point a camera at somebody, and don't use film, go to videotape because it's much easier. And that's about it. But yeah, to suggest that they were not putting on a show is entirely possible. They had to be.
But even putting on a show, you're still not going to want to do what's going to be viewed as depraved.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause they're not.
Yeah,
dumb.
it's not really good for tourism.
Yeah,
no.
tourism or just the judgment of other cultures.
This is not how you fill the New Guinea hotel scene, is promoting your cannibalism. And
no, I think they really
step off the plane, instead of putting a lay on you, they throw pig crap at you or something like that.
Yeah. Well, they elevated their game later on when they did Bruce Lee in New Guinea.
Oh yeah.
So that was actually a bunch of
they caught on finally.
Natives chasing one naked woman. So it's a reversal.
A little switch.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
Oh.
But it's something that travel shows even today have problems with is, are these guys doing something for our benefit, or is this what they're really?
Well, there's a bit at the end where he's talking about filming this one tribesman and that he doesn't even know, like, whether it's staged or not. Like, how would he have reacted had he known they were there? Because there is that disconnect of if you know you're being filmed or not being filmed.
Yes.
So what do you think about, let's say they set out to make an actual documentary and they actually mean to document this stuff, and then they get back to the editing bay and they're like, we don't have enough. So then they start staging scenes, right?
Yeah, more than likely.
Because you've heard that from like Faces of Death, all these other films. So they're about 70-30, 60-40 percentage-wise, realism versus fake. I don't know. Maybe that was, obviously it was the beginning of a trend, but they may have been the first ones to go.
You got to get
we don't have a full movie here.
You got to get it up to 70 minutes for feature length release.
Right.
So,
yeah, it definitely surprised me that it's almost 2 hours long.
Yeah, it's very stretched.
I was expecting like a tight 90 minutes. Like I was very
It should be
surprised.
a tight 90 minutes.
But
there's a lot of filler in it.
Yeah.
Right, like the next clip that comes after the cannibals, which is the Pet Haven Cemetery in Pasadena. I don't know if it's supposed to be shocking. It's just kind of
so
boring
lackluster.
And goofy.
Like this whole, it's just like, let's take all of this stuff that's supposed to be shocking and surprising and put it all together in a non-cohesive film.
Right.
And even Joey Ramone was against doing that. He didn't want to.
He didn't want to be in the Pet Cemetery for sure. Let alone bury anything there. Oh, God. But we do go from this to the first. Definitely is supposed to be shocking, the Taiwan alleged dog meat market.
I hated it.
Now, well, this is where I think this is not real, because while we're relying on our narrator, you see some dogs in cages, you see people eating. The only connection that's made there is what you're being told.
Well, told
you're being shown.
Like, especially watching it now, we know that there's Taiwanese dog festivals. We know that stuff actually happens. So if they're going for the shock value of it, they don't need to just show it to you because you're putting the pieces together.
They backed off. They could have shown, if there was something there, they could have shown it.
I'm shocked they didn't.
Why
if it isn't staged, but
I'm not. I would give this one about a 50-50 shot.
Because we didn't even have a rating system. Because I was to say maybe they couldn't show it because then that would depend on, but that didn't exist because, like you said, it was another 20 years.
Well, you still had a code, somewhat, but yeah, right.
But it still gives the reaction. I feel
there's another clip like this that where the narration and what you're seeing on screen don't necessarily match up to each other that well. Like, we're taking their word for it that what we're looking at is what they're describing. This is one of those things. I'm not entirely sure that it was real or not. The next thing after that with where they dye the chicks and are pumping foie gras into the geese is definitely not staged.
I hated
this
the
stuff
baby
happened.
chicks were the worst.
The mortality rate on those baby chicks was relatively high, all things considered. We dye them, then put them in an oven for a little while, and
it was like
they don't all make it.
And like when it's just sitting there, like soaking wet in the dye, I'm just like, poor little guy.
How do you even come up with this technique?
Well, I mean, dyeing chickens has been a thing for, like, I remember when I was younger and you could get blue and pink chickens at Easter. Like, that was a thing.
Wow.
I'm sure it went away, like, granted, for as problematic as PETA is, I'm sure a lot of that went away with the founding of PETA and all. But no, you could go to, like, Tractor Supply, get your blue chicks and your pink chicks.
This is a Italian film crew ragging on fellow Italians for dyeing chickens, basically, as far as I can tell. I wondered why they even included it, because it's...
shocking.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is it's just a mix-up, or not a mix and match
were they trying to be,
of different
Were they trying to be fair and say, hey, we do some messed up stuff too over here?
Well, I think that's what this whole thing is.
Maybe that makes sense, though. So we're like bagging on all these other cultures, so why not
bag on ourselves as well?
Yeah, make it an even playing field.
You definitely get the feel of them saying, "Hey, we all do really dumb stuff sometimes." Like,
true.
Well, we go from this to back to New Guinea, where they are force feeding women tapioca to fatten them up for the local warlord. It's not a very interesting segment. It's
tapioca.
It's a bummer. Well, except for the tapioca, yeah.
It seems like all the scenes that involve the animals are the most intense and possibly interesting scenes to watch. And then anything with humans is like, okay. Anything with humans, but might be okay unless they're human women. And that takes us to the misogyny in this film is definitely
to the next segment, which is the Vic Tanny gym thing.
Yeah.
Which we're just going to play a clip of that and go from there.
The American woman, on the other hand, must lose weight if she wishes to be successful in love. We're in Los Angeles, in one of the many Vic Tanny gyms, the famous health clinic specializing in remodeling women. Here come hundreds of American women, some to spend a good part of their most recent widowhoods in the hope of losing the extra weight accumulated during their latest marriage, and to get back in line with the laws of gravity while waiting for the next inevitable wedding. Due to the quantity of clients and their financial status, Vic Tanny's is a prosperous, almost a heavy industry. A compulsory stop along many American women's trip to the nearest altar. From here, in fact, with great metallic noises, the next train for the next honeymoon departs. A train that whistles, puffs, huffs, sweats, and then puts on its brakes and stops here once more.
So, yikes.
Oh, you didn't get the scene with the
Well, no, they do
machine.
the series of charming sound effects after that. Yeah. It's not good.
I also
it's not
love
a good
the
scene.
whole, and you can go to the gym to, to lose the weight from your last marriage to get prepared for the next one. Inevitable
marriage, nonetheless.
So out of all the segments, is that like the sports connection that they're trying to make in this movie? Like like sports related type
as
stuff?
far as I can tell, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we contrast that with something that comes up. We're going to skip ahead a little bit to another sort of fitness thing that comes up later on in the movie, and it has a distinctly different tone to the Vic Tanny.
This is Tokyo Onsen, a real service station for washing and lubrication of the Japanese who had a little too much last night. The perfectly smooth running of this service station is in the hands of 100 girls dressed only in shorts and bras. Thus, the customer, in the midst of such tortures, is at least given the comfort of the view. A nice Japanese custom prescribes that the clients be naked. We have covered them up in homage to a polite custom of our own. Japan is perhaps the cleanest country in the world. Baths and massages are rituals as ancient as its civilization. In Tokyo, a city of 10 million inhabitants, 6 million women look after 4 million men each day, cuddling, admiring, serving, and massaging them. all busy making their lives pleasant as prescribed by an ancient and very admirable tradition. Thus, the Japanese man, with each inch of his body explored, cleaned, invigorated, and scrubbed, without the least cooperation on his part, can indulge whenever he wishes in that sublime relaxation that his God promised him only after death.
So yeah, a little bit different.
And then it segues into
The Death Hotel, yeah. So yeah, just a little contrast there. I didn't hear anything about the men preparing for their next inevitable marriage, or
right. No, it's like they're entitled to this,
or even being taken down for being raging alcoholics that have to be hosed down at the end of each day
for what they did the night before.
Sure. So yeah, if there are three ongoing themes that you can point to in this movie, it is religion, snakes, and women are craven. That's about it. If there's any theme at all, I think it kind of breaks down to that. But anyway, the Vic Tanny thing gets us to a pretty boring thing about the Hong Kong food market, which is where the snakes come in.
Oh, yeah.
Again, this is not terribly shocking to us now.
No, but at the same time, I feel that they show more. If this is the scene I'm thinking of, there's one particular shot where it...
Oh, they skin the snake, yeah. Well, I didn't pull a clip of that.
Thanks.
But because it was the one that came after that sort of bugged me a little bit, which is the New York restaurant.
In New York, for the person who likes to spend, there's a famous restaurant, one of the most sophisticated and expensive in the world. While the middle-class American has to content himself with a daily steak, here, the richer American can gorge himself heartily on the following delicacies: fried ants, stuffed beetles, butterfly eggs, worms au gratin, rattlesnake, muskrat, and so forth. Here, a light lunch costs about $20. But if we take into account the exquisite rarity of the food, the price is generally considered fair.
The most shocking thing about that to me is the $20. $20 in 1962 is about $170 now.
Yeah, but the thing is now it would cost that much.
To eat ants.
In
I
New
can
York?
go get ants.
No, I'm just saying, like, in New York,
How hard is it?
restaurants where they serve the stuff
True,
that's, like,
yeah,
taboo or cool, you're going to pay easily $100 to $150 a plate. It's ridiculous.
It's the asphalt jungle.
How hard is it to make ants?
It's not that. You're paying for
Are you talking about the Robert Foxworth movie?
Yes. No, I'm not talking about the Robert Foxworth movie.
I don't think it was that hard, judging
Probably
from what
not.
I've seen.
And I don't think they spent
Until
$20
Suzanne
on
Summers
it either.
came into it.
I mean, if you think about it, people pay more than that now to eat brains and eyeballs and
we have whole shows about this cuisine now.
I know.
Though.
But if you think about it, it is not overly practiced in the U.S.
I don't know. There's a taco shop up the street from us here that would serve crickets. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that's been recent. Like, that's it's not a big thing here. Like, the weird stuff people eat on the West Coast and the East Coast, they'll pay hundreds for it.
They'll eat muskrat. I mean, come on.
People love
gelatin and
guts for
spices.
some
With
reason.
gelatin. Very 60s.
That just puts you off anyway.
I also love that it's
Creamed
just a spoonful
muskrat.
of ants. Like, it's not like they're in anything or topping anything. It's just
Well,
a
they
spoonful
could
of
have
ants.
like some soy sauce or something on them. We don't know, but
Well, A1 maybe.
yeah, some type of brine.
No, it'd been the 60s, so they would have served it over Jell-O or something like that. Little marshmallows stuck in it and ants. I don't know. What? This doesn't sound good to you?
I don't eat meat, so I'm not going to eat bugs or gelatin.
To be fair, I hadn't made that connection.
Now do you understand why I wasn't so thrilled about this film?
Are we back to the sports connection? No?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I knew you would probably have a difficult time with this one.
I did.
Yeah.
You're
Especially
supposed
not knowing.
to. You're
Right,
supposed to
no,
have
you
a
are.
difficult
You're
time
not
with
supposed
this.
to enjoy it, but
was
some
the
people
lack of
enjoy this
warning.
shit. That's a
I
scary
love
thing.
extreme films. And it's like I always kept going back to Cannibal Holocaust, where you get a couple death scenes of animals, and then it's just the extreme of everything else. This was nothing but extreme to animals. Like, every time there would be a normal scene, then it would be like, oh, let's kill this turtle and ruin its day. Oh, let's kill this shark and ruin its day. And it's like, there was just no reprieve from that.
Kind of like Cannibal Holocaust?
But that's not true, because you get 3 animal deaths in that. Pretty quick.
We're not keeping score here, Joe Bob. Come on.
I'm just saying. Ugh. And then it's just the brutality against the humans, which I don't care about that.
Yeah, I don't care about that either.
Because that's always not, well, for the most part, not real.
We're not the innocents.
Well, we do get a bit of brutality against humans. A couple of segments where they have the weird festival where people beat their legs until they're bleeding and then walk down the street. Yeah. I guess.
And then ZZ Top plays.
The running of the bulls thing.
Well, that's followed by the Lifesavers Girls of Australia, which I guess was a thing. I couldn't find any references to it being a thing. But
Grape's my favorite.
I guess they did it.
Lifesaver.
Continue.
Cherry's better.
If you're going to give me CPR, the least you could do is grape this up for me, please.
Grape ape.
It all goes back to grape ape.
After that, we get probably the most out of place segment in the entire film, which is the Bikini Atoll disaster, which is total fact. All of it is true. But I don't know why they put it in this particular movie, given everything else. There's no snakes. And there's no one's in a bikini. So
just named the wrong thing.
I guess. I mean, even to this day, the people who were supposed to live there, who were promised they could move back within 10 years, are stuck somewhere else because it's still an ecological disaster area. It just seemed like a weird fit for this movie.
I feel like they wanted to lace in enough fact.
A little public service message.
Well, not even that. Just put enough fact in it to keep people going, well, maybe then this is fact. Because then you're like, it's muddled enough that you don't know where you should or shouldn't question it.
Well, that audience may not have questioned any of this because like we haven't seen, that was unprecedented. Nobody saw this kind of thing.
The nuclear testing at the Bikini Atoll had only taken place maybe 6 years before this movie was released. And how they got access to that, I have no idea. Because it was forbidden space.
Do we know if the visuals are
The footage is real.
That is, okay.
The footage, how they got it, no idea.
It could have been another thing, too, that people had footage and this was a way for them to get it out. And maybe there was a correspondence that was like, hey, if you can get this for us, then we can put it in our film. That may be why it doesn't feel like it goes with everything else.
Maybe just stylistically a little too different, and it's probably fact.
Well, and it's shocking enough.
And
or tonally, perhaps they were trying to do that, and then they were like, well, we don't have enough to work with to make like a documentary based. No, I mean, I'm being honest.
That's a possibility.
And like we're like, well, what do we do with this footage? So we just
and then they made everything around
shoehorn it around all this other stuff.
Who knows? Maybe the people who made this were directly affected by that. You never know. And this was their way of getting it out there. He's like, sure.
Yeah, I'm not buying that for a minute.
I mean, you don't buy a lot of this.
No, especially not the next segment. I'll explain why. This is the bit where we see the sharks eating the underwater graves, which they will, and then are forced to eat sea urchins until they run off and die. Well, here's the thing. If you watch this thing on YouTube, down in the comments, there's a guy who claims to be a guy that was on the boat when they shot this. And he said the filmmakers came on and just demanded that they shove sea urchins into these sharks, and they couldn't figure out why, because it's not something that they actually do.
I doubt they had the ability to just be like, no, we're not going to do that.
Well, that also, and in the tiny amount of research I actually did on this, I can't find anything to suggest that sharks don't gobble sea urchin on the reg.
Wasn't it the whole thing is they wanted to retaliate because the sharks ate a 12-year-old boy or 13-year-old boy, whatever.
Because they'll eat anything.
Yeah. It's almost like if you go in the water, there's a chance of it.
Just ask Shelby Overman. Right?
Right.
I mean, he was told not to work overtime. He worked overtime.
Oh,
anyway.
Yeah.
Honestly, your reaction to what he says half the time is worth it.
Half the time.
I said overtime. What do you mean half the time?
So yeah, sharks eat sea urchins. Probably not in huge quantities, but they do.
Well, I mean, and I'm sure
they eat license plates. They eat anything that's in the water with them.
Weren't they also hacking him in the mouth at one point with something? Or did I make that up? This is when I tapped out.
It was very.
And then I finished it later.
It was sort of a violent scene, so you may have misseen.
I mean, I didn't
some
like
aspect
the hook
of it.
in the side.
Oh,
I thought that was enough.
Yeah, there's I remember this being a tap out point, I think, for me even, because I'm like obsessed with sharks and I hate documentaries that show this type of shit. Even like well-meaning documentaries like Shark Water.
Oh, like I can't watch Planet Earth. I can't watch any of those because it's like, okay, yeah, this stuff happens, but I don't need to see it.
Yeah, like the finning industry, and I don't know. Yeah, no, it's horrendous.
So we go from here to the crypt in Italy, which is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't know how it fits into this particular movie being factual, but it's there. It's kind of interesting. It's not particularly gross. If you know anything about the Paris Underground, you've probably seen something very similar to this also.
And
only
Katie
in much
knows
smaller
about the
scale.
London Underground.
I do.
It's full of skulls. You can't get around in there. Go to the German beer drinking,
Bunch of raw meat.
which, if it shocks you that Germans drink a lot of beer, I'm sorry, but it happens.
I hadn't known that. Okay.
You didn't. Never made the connection.
No.
I still think some of it has to do with the reaction to this stuff back then. Like, people knew then that they drank beer, but in excess and how they act and things like that probably wasn't an everyday knowledge point for people.
Germany still had a little bit of makeup work to do.
Oh yeah.
On the national stage for one reason or another.
It's almost like they just want to break everything down that they're showing. Like, these people aren't great. Look at what they do. Judge them. Like,
right. Look down on them. Yeah.
Judging people for not being great. Suffice it to say, the group that gets, besides women in general, that gets the worst of it are the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Not only here in Singapore, but in all of Malaya, the Chinese represent more than 2/3 of the population. Untiring in their studies of endless ways of making money, they are at the same time also known for their physical laziness. They don't dance, they don't swim, they don't run, they don't jump, and they don't play football. Actually, the Chinese, just as they don't like to waste money, don't waste their energies either. They prefer to use them at the table or in bed. There's not another city on this earth where so much is eaten as in Chinatown, the Chinese quarter of Singapore. Just as there is no race as prolific as the yellow race. Between one snack and another, the Chinese find time to fill their houses with dozens of legitimate and illegitimate children, thus assuring themselves a good number of birthdays to celebrate with heavy dinners. The Chinese celebrate all festive events at the dinner table. Religious holidays, national holidays, good business deals, the bankruptcy of their competitor, a peril avoided, marriage, births, and even death.
All we see there are people eating and having a good time, and overlaid onto that is,
And they clearly violated the no photograph
Well, this is
rule.
the interesting thing. This scene, and I don't want to be that person, but I'm going to date this episode.
Be
by
that
saying
person.
this.
Come on.
Well,
Lay it on us.
When everything started with Corona, everybody was like, oh, it's because they eat horrible things and blah, 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 blah. So this kind of goes hand in hand with things that are even going on today with perpetuating racism. So, I mean, I feel like that's why that's it, because, like, on average, people don't just eat, I don't remember what they're called. They have a name, the black eggs, where they're basically, they sit forever and they ferment and then they eat them. That's what he was slicing with the string. And then the chicken heads, and like, on average, that's not a typical delicacy. So people see that and then they have a visceral reaction to it.
Sure.
So it just kind of goes
Street
hand in hand
market
with what's
food.
going on now with this.
They race through a whole lot of yikes in that narrative.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
For sure. The Japanese, they're fine. Cleanest place on earth. Not so much here.
Yeah.
And every time I see that clip, I'm kind of taken aback by some aspect of it. It is
you
totally.
were like, ooh.
It is
he
one,
did lean back.
100% cringe all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
But you did get hungry for some street tacos.
Oh, yeah.
After watching that.
Of course.
That's the important part.
Some of them black egg tacos.
I don't remember what they're called. They have a name.
Not caviar.
No, that's fish eggs.
Yeah.
This is like a hard-boiled egg that I think they actually put it in dirt or something, and it ferments, and then you eat it later. It has a name, but I don't know what it's called.
If anybody
It's called
listening knows what it
gross.
is, you can email your answers to autopilot@smoothhillsradiohour.com, and we'll get back to you on that. So from this point, I'll let you look that up.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Century egg.
Century egg. Oh, wow, that is buried for a long time. So from this point on, the movie really runs out of gas. They were really kind of scrambling to find some way to pad out the time because it gets pretty dang boring after this.
They wear out the grooves very early on.
We have, the Hotel for the Dying was interesting. We compared it once to Monty Python and the Holy Grail when they're bringing the cart through and
bring out your dead.
bring out their dead, sort of a thing. Because a lot of those people didn't look that bad.
But the thing is, the rates are crazy. Like nightly stays in that hotel.
That should be an
and
hourly rates.
Yeah.
At least.
And the checkout man, they're slow to check out the next day at 1 p.m.
You knock and no
It's
one
like
answers.
there's never a vacancy at that place.
From there, we go to the car graveyard in Los Angeles, which is dull as dirt. Who cares?
I feel like it was a good display of just how much humans waste.
Okay.
Like, and that it just shows how much, like, with the issues of, like, dumps and things like that in America. That's what I got out of it. I don't know if that's what they were going for. And the fact that they repurpose it for art and sell it in Italy.
I more or less took a nap at that point in the movie. We did get then to Yves Klein, famous painter of blue things, who probably never used actual naked women to do any painting, but hey, he did this for the movie.
Surprised.
Mostly famous for his squares of just solid blue. Incidentally, Yves Klein suffered a heart attack while watching this movie at the Cannes Film Festival when it premiered there. It didn't kill him, but he then suffered 2 more heart attacks, the second of which finally did kill him. June 6, 1962. He was 34 years old.
Damn.
This was his probably first and last film appearance was in.
Was he the guy that was just watching and went, like, the really surprised look because of naked women?
Probably. Who knows what kind of shape he was in before the movie
I
started.
could get the blood pressure going.
His condition definitely deteriorated longer the movie went on. That's for sure. From there, where do we go from there? Well, then we got the Honolulu, the hula dancing.
That was so weird as well, how it was presented.
Yeah.
Like with the translation of the song and just...
Let's hear it.
I don't know.
Oh, I thought you were going to do it. Okay, never mind.
Acapella? Come on.
It was just basically being like, oh, gracious white man and oh, seductive white woman. And it's just like, all right. It's just weird, that whole scene.
We get the running of the bulls, which is not even good footage of the running of the bulls, really.
A lot of good
all things
bull
considered.
beheading, if that's what you're looking for.
I mean, Mutual of Omaha Wild Kingdom was probably doing better coverage of the running of the bulls.
They're probably doing better coverage of most everything that they cover in this.
Was that show even on in '62? I remember watching it in the '70s. It was mostly about lions.
It was always on the
always had something to do with lions.
Syndicated and
And the movie ends with the cargo cult back in New Guinea, which is a thing. There were cargo cults, not many of them. And I guess you were saying it was supposed to end on a hopeful note where these people have somehow built...
I didn't say that. I said it's weird that they gave the juxtaposition of, hey, here's all this hellish stuff, and then they're feeding them, like, communion wafers and stuff like that, basically being like, they can right their wrongs, and it's just interesting that that's the route they ended on. Or at least that's how I took it.
I don't remember. I never seen Mondo Kane 2, so I don't know how that one ended. It came out a year after this, so it was all the stuff that wasn't good enough for this movie.
It was probably all outtakes.
Might have been. I mean, there are several that came out after.
Which is crazy to think that as padded as this film was,
that something didn't get included.
Yeah. But
the fact that it came out the following year, though, it probably was all shot at the same time.
They would have had to.
Yeah.
Or it was like a 4-hour movie, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense, actually. No, if you have,
Get out of here with it. No. And after this, it was definitely an arms race to see who could get their next movie out faster than the next guy. And because I think there was a movie called Echo that came out just after this that was ECCO, which is the Italian word for look. So narrated by George Saunders.
Oh, yeah.
It was definitely all... They didn't even try to hide the fact that they were staging most of that movie.
Well, that's my question is, when you have your extreme films, like a lot of the extreme Italian extreme films,
Gary Cerrone kind of,
like Cannibal Holocaust, anything like that, how does that differ from Mondo Cane? But because Mondo Cane and Echo or whatever are supposed to be quote unquote real, is that where it differs from what I've always called extreme films?
Possibly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to categorize.
Well, all these movies put themselves out there, at least tongue in cheek, as being the real deal.
Well, some do,
and they've banned in
even going up
countries,
into the found footage craze we just went through now. Even Blair Witch put itself out there initially as the real thing.
Right. Well, that was
and a lot of people
basically
bought it.
Cannibal Holocaust all over again. Yeah.
So I'm sure that it was supposed to be like, this isn't quite real, but they were still going to put it out there like that just in case somebody believed it.
Not all extreme horror or extreme film is put out to be perceived that way.
Sure.
So that's why I'm like, where's the
line?
disconnect between the two? So
it was in the marketing.
Okay.
They definitely would put it out there as...
Because that doesn't happen as much nowadays.
No, I don't think
I would say
you could.
the last one we got that way, that was like, is this real or is it was Paranormal Activity? And that definitely isn't extreme in any way, but you did have that.
Well, it's extremely boring.
That it was.
Like, I think I got 20 minutes into it.
Wow.
Real, though. But you did have that going into it, like you didn't know if it was
I don't think you could get away with it now. I mean,
I don't know. I think you could because...
what was somebody in 62 going to do to check this thing? They were going to go to the library and just start looking things up.
And that's what I was saying with you. Like, that's why it was good to interlace it with things that were real, because you didn't have technology available to fact check it or anything like that. So if you put enough real in there, then they're probably not even going to question.
Everybody had heard of the Vic Tanny gyms. Everybody had heard of the running of the bulls. They probably heard of China. I don't know. So you have some plausibility there. But yeah, the level of realism wasn't even there with this first movie all the way, for sure. And it just got progressively more and more staged after that. I think by the time we got to Faces of Death, I mean, they've only now admitted that 75-80% of it was complete crap.
Yeah.
Any news footage you saw was real, but everything after that was just completely made up.
I think, I don't know, the validity of all of those scenes. I've only seen the first Faces of Death.
You pretty much get the gist of it.
Yeah. I would say it's at least a 60-40 split.
I feel like the reason we
60 fake,
The reason we don't get it now as much, too, besides laws, is there's websites for this stuff now.
Right.
If you really want to see horrible, real stuff, you just go online. Like, that there's probably not a market for it, this
movie is on YouTube.
It is.
Well, it's like making a porn film now. What's really the point sometimes? You could just upload clips or whatever.
Sure. So would this movie have worked better as a clip show?
Well, we didn't have the internet back in 1962.
The hell you say?
No, we did not have the super information highway back then. We had Route 66. It was different.
It was simpler times.
No, but what she's saying, the market would be dried up to this because
it's just available anywhere.
It's not a novelty anymore. Yeah.
And this movie, the only shocking part of Mondo to me, this movie was
Mondo
the film.
What? Mondo.
Don't make me do it.
Just say Kane.
Mondo Kane or Kane, whatever. The only shocking part to me now, looking back at this movie, were the filmmakers themselves, really, and the attitudes that they were taking towards the things they were shooting.
Oh yeah, that's definitely evident. When
that
you're
was
watching
probably how they set out the production. Like, let's document these wacky people with their wacky practices and frown on them.
What a shame! Look at them. That kind of thing.
And it does
was that
definitely
Connery?
come out that way.
Huh?
Was that Connery?
Was it?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure if it was Jason or Sean. I don't know.
When you said Jason, I thought like Voorhees, and I was like, he doesn't talk.
I don't do a good Connery, so.
Oh. Yeah, you can do it. Anybody can do Connery, though.
Really?
Yeah. Just say the word pushy. That's all it takes. Come on. You're halfway there.
No.
Do it.
I just think of the scene in The Critic where they have Connery in there. You remember The Critic, the TV?
Yes, the John Lovitz.
When he becomes a long-haul truck driver, it's like, we're going to call you Lard Butt. Lard Butt? All right, how about Tushy Galore? Lard Butt it is.
So you have been doing the Connery impression all these years.
No, yeah. Everybody has that one that they're tenuous about. It's Christopher Walken, Sean Connery. Those are tough.
Those are tough?
Now, if they had gotten Connery to narrate this movie...
Would it have been better?
That would have been interesting.
This narrator, though, is very familiar. I'm trying to figure out what... I don't know who it is, but he's got a Paul Frees vibe about him, but also mixed with...
Shadow Stevens?
Yeah.
You're going for... I could tell you're going for Shadow Stevens
not.
Just then.
Although,
Stefano Sibaldi.
Yeah.
Of course. How could we forget? Who is Stefano Sibaldi? I'm unfulfamiliar.
I'm sure he's... things.
Oh, Lord.
I mean, yeah, that's...
But...
You
mostly
heard him a lot,
Italian stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it reminds me of an actor that I can't place right now. I don't know. But Shadow Stevens is an actor, so we'll just run with that.
Yeah.
She latches onto his honker. What's the line from Kentucky Fried Movie?
Yeah.
That's great.
Recuerdos a todos.
He's tripping over shit, trying to get to the next. Oh, so good.
Yeah. It's better remembered than watched again, really.
No, you got to watch it again. Although that nearly is as offensive as this is probably now, but
that one or the Groove Tube, I think,
that's my favorite.
Those have not aged well.
Oh, that's the best one.
Oh,
Ken Shapiro.
Comedy in general doesn't age well, but the Groove
No, that
Tube,
one, that was my introduction
so
to Curtis
much.
Mayfield was the Groove Tube. So
Oh, well.
it's valid.
So anyway, Mondo Kane.
Mondo what?
So you didn't like this movie very much. Are you glad you saw it, though? It's out of the way
On
now.
one side, yes, because I do watch a lot of, like I was saying,
Mhm.
I like extreme horror, extreme cinema. So it's like, I feel like I can tick this off the list now, and I don't ever have to worry about it
Yeah,
again.
it's kind
and
of
that's
essential
great.
viewing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, I would have been okay had I never
Right.
saw it.
Well, no, whenever somebody puts out their 100 documentaries you must see before you die, this one is not on it.
I mean, I don't
think.
No.
Not usually.
Although Hands on a Hard Body, is that on there?
That is on there.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Do you think it's not on there because it's not 100% fact?
Oh, yeah.
If
Probably, it's
everything
been
in it
debunked.
had been
Oh, yeah.
true, then it may, because it did set the precedence for, what did you call it?
Even if it
again?
was 100% true, it's still not a good movie.
Well,
but it
but
it started a trend, like she said,
Like,
and broke down
it's
the
like
wall.
most people won't watch Cannibal Holocaust, but
Right.
it set the precedence for found footage. So
Right.
For better or worse, this movie did open the door to a lot of stuff that came after that. Not great.
probably a lot for the horror genre as well.
Mm.
So
Nathan,
Yes.
final thoughts on Mondo Kane? Kane?
Two rousing thumbs up. No.
No.
It's, I think I told you I saw this probably probably mid to late 90s last time. The old VidCrest VHS.
First time and last time?
Yes. And it was out of curiosity. It was like, you never, and even going in, I was like, I'm not into this shit typically.
Well, the guy from Faith No More loves this. I ought to check it out.
So,
Apparently it's one of Mike Patton's favorites.
I don't know.
Him being the authority on this.
Okay.
I guess.
Well, at any rate,
Well.
it sold for a wad on eBay. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, they'll sell any damn thing on eBay these days.
They will. They will.
Well, on that note, I think we can bring this tragic episode to a close. Thank you all for listening. Smooth Thrills Radio Hour. Good night.
Well, that's it. The show and Series 1 are over. Thanks for listening. The Smooth Thrills Radio Hour is produced by Ghostcraft and is recorded live in Dallas, Texas. Please email your questions and comments to autopilot at smoochthrillsradiohour.com. We'll see you back here soon for Series 2. Enjoy the rest of your day.